Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Richard Fine through Sturgeon 1 and Sturgeon 2 and Sturgeon 3, and 18 months illegally, unlawfully, punitively held in jail by a criminal of the bench, also known as Judge Yaffe, and we have him here today, live and kicking. I'm William Wagener, your host. I've already taken off my white hat. Come in a little closer, please. This is how we take back America, and I thank you for tuning in. This is Richard Fine, who went to the law school and training and had, 50 years of practice?
Well, I started practicing in 1967 after I finished my PhD at the London School of Economics and International Law.
You went to which law school?
Law school was the University of Chicago Law School.
That's a tough law school.
At that time, it was #1 in the country.
And you also represented a foreign country for a while in Los Angeles.
From 1995 to 2000, I was the Consul General for the Kingdom of Norway, and I represented Norway in the counties of Los Angeles, Riverside, Orange, Ventura, and I think that was it.
That's a lot.
Yeah, LA, Orange, Riverside, and Ventura. So basically I represented everything down to San Diego and up to Santa Barbara.
And in spite of that, I never heard of you until one day I got a notice that some guy named Richard Fine was being held in the LA jail because he would not show some paperwork to a judge named Yaffe.
No.
That was the first time I heard of you, in spite of all your glorious career.
Well, I think my, quote, renown occurred primarily within the LA area, except that after Judge Yaffe, then I was on CNN, and prior to Judge Yaffe, I was somewhat well known in the LA area. I was on KNBC a number of times.
So Judge Yaffe, before he retired, you were never convicted of any crime. He just held you in contempt because you wouldn't show him where your money, your bank account was?
Well, what happened with Judge Yaffe is that Judge Yaffe was overseeing a case which I brought against the County of Los Angeles. And it had to do with a development that was put up by a developer who in Marina Del Rey, and just to give you a little bit of background, Marina Del Rey is owned by the County of Los Angeles. It's the largest, shall we say, small boat harbor in the United States. It started out with approximately 8,000 slips. It's now down, at this point in time, was down to about 6,500 slips. And they sold the land around it, or they didn't sell it, they leased out the land to developers who developed apartment buildings. And one developer was by the name of Jerry Epstein. And Jerry wanted to redevelop a 200-unit apartment building into a 500-unit apartment building. And in the process of doing that, there was a condominium project which was right next door, which would be overshadowed. So these people retained me to fight the development. Well, in the process of developing it, Jerry happened to have given some contributions to 2 out of the 5 LA County supervisors. Approximately 6 weeks before that development came up to the supervisors for a vote. One was Antonovich and the other one was Kanabi. We caught that, and we brought a lawsuit and Yaffe. Now, in bringing that lawsuit, I never actually appeared in front of Yaffe during the time that lawsuit took place. Now, coincidentally with that, I had started way back in 2001 exposing the LA Superior Court judges for taking illegal payments from the county. And nobody really knew about that. But what happened, and I'm digressing a little bit, but this gives you a background of what takes place here. I had in 1998, 1999, I had 3 cases against the county. The first case was Amjadi and a union versus the county. And I was brought into that case because the county was taking $45 million a year of environmental funds and putting it into the county general budget. I took that case to trial. I won. I ended up taking that 45 million, putting it into a special fund. There was $11 million left in the general fund. I took that and put it into a special fund. We froze all the fees, the environmental fees until that 11 million was over. That 45 million has grown at this point in time. Mind you, this is 1999, so you're looking 99, 2009, that's 450 million, at that point. And now another 9 years, we're actually up to about $1 billion of that money.
$1 billion.
That's right. And so what took
That
place?
they can't steal and squirrel
They
away
can't
and
squeal. They
buy
can't
themselves vacations and new
can't
cars with.
steal it anymore.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, so I wanted to get paid.
You're the man.
Judge didn't want to pay me. I
Oh.
said, gee, this is sort of strange. And he said it was bad for a county union to sue the county. That looked a little strange. So that was one case. Second case that I had was against the county because the county was taking $150 million of the county transportation fund and giving it to the county, cash, and they were borrowing another $150 million. And I said, this isn't right. This was called Veltman versus the County of Los Angeles and Metropolitan Transit District. Went to trial on that one. I won. The county appealed, and the case got overturned. And a Superior Court judge by the name of Zuliger was on that appellate panel, and we get turned over. And the county was arguing that they really needed that money because they had a medical crisis. And the judge told you don't have a medical crisis, you have a management crisis. You're stealing money. So anyway,
Stealing money would be a management crisis.
yeah. So basically, I lose that one. Third case comes, and this was against Gil Garcetti, the district attorney of LA. There was money that was being given by sometimes fathers, sometimes mothers, for child support and spousal support. Well, Garcetti had accumulated $14 million of this money, and he was supposed to give it back or give it out to the women and children within 6 months. He wasn't doing that. And he accumulated it, so I sued him. And he admitted that he was doing it. We're in the midst of trial. People get up there, they admit that they're doing it. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the trial, the county moves to have the case dismissed. And Judge Chalfant dismisses the case. And I said, what the heck is happening here? So these were the three things. Now, at the same point in time, mind you, this happens 1999, 2000. September 15th, 2000, Chief Justice Ronald M. George gives a speech to a luncheon of the California Judges Association. Now, I don't find out about this for a little while, about a year or so later.
Well, you weren't a judge. You were
I wasn't
attending.
a judge and I wasn't attending
Right.
either, but it got reported in the Metropolitan News, but it took some time for that story to get to me. Anyway, he said that the money that the LA County judges were getting from the county was unlawful, maybe unconstitutional.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe possibly unconstitutional.
This is prior to SBX 211.
Yeah, so what happens is that and then another judge who was there said, yeah, maybe these guys ought to buy us lunch. Well, that got reported in the Metropolitan News. I find out about that about a year or so later, and I say, aha, it's the so-called aha moment. And I research it, and sure enough, not only is it violates Article 6, Section 19 of the California Constitution, it violates Canon 4D1 of the Canons of Judicial Ethics, it violates the bribery statute.
Just minor things
Just
like that.
minor things. It violates the intangible right to honest services, which is a federal criminal statute. I mean, these people right up the line. Anyway, I expose that in briefs starting in 2001. The California Court of Appeals says, well, it's too late. You should have done it before. I said, didn't know about it before. They say, we don't care. I sue them in federal court in 2 suits in 2002. County starts going berserk. And that's when they do their scheme against me, which I don't find out about until 2012. But what happens is that the county or the judges, the LA County judges, go against me in 2003. They go to the state bar to file charges, trumped up charges against me. I moved to dismiss them in 2004. They get dismissed. In fact, the state bar removes them in the interest of justice. 2004, the judges come against me again, this time secretly.
How can they do it secretly?
They get in there and they write a secret letter, and then the state bar goes through and says, oh, we did this on our own. And then that comes out in 2007. But in 2006...
And you didn't have any notice at that time?
I didn't find out about that until the trial.
Until the trial?
Yeah. But what happened in 2006 in the Sturgeon case, Sturgeon came in and, as they admitted to me, basically copied what was my complaint, which I filed in federal court, saying it's a violation of Article 6, Section 19, because Article 6, Section 19 says that only the state legislature can prescribe the amount of money or the compensation of the judges.
Got it.
So that becomes what is known as Sturgeon 1. And
Okay.
luckily, they got a good judge, Judge Benke, went along with it. And Sturgeon 1 held that the payments to the judges violated Article 6, Section 19. Boom. The axe fell. So what happened? The judges ran to Darrell Steinberg, who was then the president pro tem of the Senate,
Senate,
California
California.
Senate, and in 3 days, they pushed through SBX 211. And SBX 211 said that those county payments could continue to the judges who were basically in power as of July 1st, 2008. They passed it on February 20th, 2009. But then it said something else, which was really wonderful. It gave the judges retroactive immunity from criminal prosecution, civil liability, and disciplinary action.
Isn't that the epitome of tyranny?
It's not tyranny, it's the epitome of chutzpah.
Chutzpah. I'd call it tyrannical power.
Because what happens is that by doing that, they did the one thing that nobody else could do. They basically legislated that these judges were criminals, because you don't give immunity from criminal liability
Unless you've done a
to
crime.
innocent people. You only give it to guys that are criminals.
I never thought of it that way, but
and
you're
then-
right. They basically admitted these
That's
judges
right. They
were criminals.
legislated them to be criminals. Now, it's the same thing.
Amazing.
Now, what happens is Article 4, Section 18 of the California Constitution says that if judges commit misconduct, they can be impeached. So this thing passed the California legislature literally almost unanimously. I think there were 3 votes against. There were 8 people that basically said we aren't voting, and a couple
Yeah,
of
there were
people
some
that didn't show.
abstentions that
There were
just
some- there were
decided to
8
be out getting bribes from the lobbyists rather than
right.
be on
So-
the record.
So what happened is that they didn't impeach these people. They just went in and passed this and gave them this immunity. So now you have all these judges that have committed misconduct. All right, so what happens next is that part of SBX 211 said that the Judicial Council had to go in and give a report by November 2009 as to who was getting these illegal payments. Well, it turned out 90%
That's a big number.
of the Superior Court judges were getting the illegal payments. And you had a number, there were somewhere in the vicinity of 11 counties that were just giving county payments. And then there were another number of courts that were just giving payments, illegal payments from the courts. And then there were another number of counties that were giving, where the judges were getting payments from the counties and the courts. Well, all told, there were only 157 judges that were not getting any payments at all.
What I should probably say here that Richard hasn't stated that prior to 1987, 88, all judges were paid from county funds and sometimes from the county courts or the specific court. They had fees and that would pay the judges. Then somebody got the bright idea that all the judges statewide should be paid the same amount. So they passed a statewide law that the judges were only to take their state compensation, I think beginning what, in 88?
No, it was the Lockyer-Eisenberg law. It was passed in 1997.
97, okay.
1997, Lockyer-Eisenberg said that the state took over all trial court payments. So before you had a mixture of payments coming from the state and payments coming from the counties, but it has always been in the Constitution that only the state can prescribe the compensation. So as of 1997, you end up with the state taking over on everything. It has always been illegal for the counties to give compensation because in 1997, what they did is they had what is known as MOA or memorandums in which counties would give the money to the state and then the state would pay it. See, the counties always gave a contribution into it, and before the county would give their contribution directly.
Once they passed that law, they were only supposed to take their state compensation, but some counties kept giving them bonuses.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what you ran into. You couldn't get the county to lose a lawsuit because the county was paying them as well as their state compensation. So like LA, some of those guys were making as much as the United States Supreme Court.
Well, as it turned out, what happened is that the LA County judges were making approximately $230,000 a year.
Not bad if you can get the job.
That's right. and the interesting thing of this is that the rationale for doing this, so way back in 1988, there was a memo that came out. It came out in the Sturgeon case, where their rationale was that they said they were doing this to attract and retain quality judges for the LA Superior Court. But the problem is that this rationale didn't work because you can't pay a judge to attract them because they're already in the job. So you aren't going to attract them. And you can't pay a judge to retain them because they're already in the job. And they have to run for re-election in order to keep that job. So the whole thing logically didn't work. There's another thing that you also have to look at, and that is in the Sturgeon case, they said that they were successful in attracting and retaining better quality judges. But if you really look at this, now I have to admit I haven't done the total survey, but I've just looked offhand at the people that became judges in LA after they started making these payments. And if you look across the board, what you have is the primary people that became judges in LA were either former deputy district attorneys, former public defenders, either federal public defenders or state public defenders, former county councils, or former state deputy state attorneys general. These were probably over 90% of the people that became judges. If you look before they made these payments, the payments started in the mid-1980s, these were the same people that became judges then. So actually, giving more money did not, at least in my opinion, did not really change the mix of who was becoming a judge. So why did this start? What actually happened is that I think it's Article 4 of the LA County Charter, and I could be wrong on the article number, but it says that the county supervisors get the same amount of money as the compensation of the judges. So by giving the judges more money, the county supervisors gave themselves a raise. Tricky, but that's the way that it worked. Now, after this digression, we get back to good old Judge Yaffe. I filed a case against Judge Yaffe. What happened, or against the county. We have a certain number of days in order to declare the trial date. I missed that by 1 day. So the county came in to move and dismiss the case. I came in and I said, I missed the calculation, and we can keep going with the case. And the case law and everything holds that that's true. So I make that motion, and I also make a cross motion to win the case because I had 90 days to do this. I did it on the 91st day. The county had 60 days to produce the administrative record. They didn't produce the record. So I made a motion to win the case because the county defaulted on not producing the record. At the same time, that 2004 secret complaint in 2006 became a complaint against me with the state bar. So I'm fighting that complaint. And what happened on October 17th, 2007, Judge Hahn issues an involuntary and active order against me. Now this becomes very interesting. He is the state bar judge. But Judge Hahn had a little problem. Judge Hahn was sitting on the Board of Governors of the Southern California Special Olympics, and who, for the first time in history, gave money to the Southern California Board of Governors, Southern California Special Olympics? Guess who? LA County. Contributes $30,000 to the Special Olympics.
Out of the general fund, probably.
Out of their general fund.
Where a whole lot of environmental funds and other money have been dumped in.
Judge Hahn refuses to recuse himself.
Was he related to Supervisor Hahn?
No, this is H-O-N-N.
Okay.
And he refuses to go. I bring it up with higher ups in the state bar, and they say, oh, no harm, no foul. No. I say, like, sure. Now, guess what else happens in the state bar proceeding? I have other suits against the county. Defending one of the other suits is a lawyer for good old Jerry Epstein. And who is he? He's the president of the state bar, Sheldon Sloan.
He wouldn't have an axe to grind against you,
That's
would he?
right. He wants me out. Yeah. And
Not an axe, maybe a big blade.
that's right.
Sharpening
And
it.
it's a misdemeanor for him to be around and not disclose this. So he's now guilty of a misdemeanor.
But he hasn't been indicted for it yet.
Yeah, never got indicted for
That's
it.
what I thought.
The person representing the county in negotiating with Jerry Epstein on the release of this piece of property is the new incoming president of the state bar. He's working for Munger Tolles. He should be out. Nothing happens to him. And then
Munger Tolles' office is where, in L.A. or Beverly Hills?
L.A. Okay. Then you have the person who was the controller of the L.A., city of L.A., who happened to be involved with another development, which is Playa Vista, and I was taking on Playa Vista. I was retained to enforce an order against them that came down from the Court of Appeals, and I caught her, and she is sitting on the board of directors of the state bar. So I had three people.
Wouldn't be any conflict of interest there, would
That's
there?
right. Yeah. So three people.
These are your courts, people.
Yeah.
That's when I say we, the people,
Okay. So
aren't,
that's what
aren't,
happened.
aren't getting our Article 3 courts. We're getting bar-carded criminal.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you call them a bar-carded mafia?
Well, no,
I mean,
I
yeah.
never give them that name, because what happens with all of this is that the state bar ends up they end up with a state bar review court. Now, at that review court, they have three people. This one person is Remke, who was the chairman. There was another one, Judge Stovitz, and Judy something or other. I think it was either Lewin or Lewis, whatever it was. And she was actually an ethics professor also. That hearing was actually recorded and published on KNBC. In that hearing, Stovitz was sleeping, literally asleep.
But he wasn't snoring, though, was he?
No, he didn't snore. He was sleeping silently.
Well, at least he was polite.
Yeah. Remke didn't say anything, and the other one asked one question. But interestingly enough, at that hearing, the state bar court representative said that we are not prosecuting Mr. Fine for his rhetoric, for his pleadings, or for any of his statements. Well, the entire state bar complaint against me was based upon my pleadings. So the state bar basically told them, we aren't going forward with this because it's protected by the First Amendment. That didn't bother them at all. They just went forward and recommended that I be convicted. But there's also another problem. The Sturgeon case came down before their decision became final. Well, 2 years later, that was in 2009. 2 years later, in 2011, the state bar came out with a statement saying that the real reason that I was disbarred was because of my position against the judges with respect to their taking the illegal payments. And that's when all of these motions started in the Supreme Court.
What year?
2011. Now, at the same time, what happened is that the people that were sitting on the Supreme Court at the time of my disbarment were Ronald M. George. Ronald M. George had taken illegal payments when he was a Superior Court judge in LA County.
But he got immunity under SBX 211, right?
That's right. But he was now sitting on the Supreme Court judging me
For bringing up untidy issues.
Untidy, in fact, I moved to have all these people recused. Justice Moreno, he took illegal payments while he was sitting as a Superior Court judge in LA County. And then you go through some of the other people. Justice Corrigan of Alameda County got illegal payments from the Alameda court. So as we went down the entire court, 4 out of the 7 people that were sitting on the California Supreme Court who voted for my disbarment, because Werdiger didn't vote, all had taken illegal payments from either a court or a county.
There wouldn't have been, if they all avoided conflict of interest.
That's right.
They would have all had to take themselves off the court and find substitutes to come in from.
Exactly.
But they had all taken bribes, so
Exactly.
there wasn't anybody really who could sit.
That's right. So what do you have here? What you have is you have a basic cover-up of the entire issue of a court system that was loaded with 90% of the Superior Court judges getting retroactive immunity from criminal prosecution, civil liability, and disciplinary action. But now we go up into the higher courts, because a lot of these people that were Superior Court judges that got this retroactive immunity had moved up into the courts of appeal and into the California Supreme Court. So you have an entire court system that is composed of people that got retroactive immunity from criminal prosecution, civil liability, and disciplinary action. And these people are sitting in this court today. Now, what can we do about it? What we can do about it is we only have one place where we can go to get rid of this. As far as Supreme Court justices and Court of Appeal justices, they have what is known as a retention vote. Right now, you have Justice Corrigan and
Justice Goodwin,
and Justice Kruger, who are up for re-election.
Leandra Kruger.
Now, Leandra Kruger was appointed in 2015.
Next month, you can vote to not retain Kruger and
That's right.
Corrigan.
Now,
But that only gets 2 out of
I think
them.
it's 2. But then the next time around, you knock off the others, each one. Now, Kruger is a new judge. Kruger was, she's about 37 years old. She was, not a Superior Court judge or anything else. But the problem that exists with Kruger comes up with the fact that she voted on the non-opposed motion to turn down removal of the disbarment. Now, what does that go to? It goes to integrity. And integrity is the only thing that a court has. If the court does not have integrity, it has nothing. You aren't looking at how their decisions are made or what their decisions are. You aren't looking at their political affiliation, what we talked about the last time that I appeared on this show. You're looking at the gut integrity of the judge. If the judge does not have integrity to deal with the errors of the court and correct them, I respectfully suggest to you the judge does not belong on the court. Let's do a shift here. Let's segue to our most recent problem in the nation, Brett Kavanaugh. Brett Kavanaugh, in his hearing, lashed out at the Democrats. He lashed out at Hillary Clinton. I don't really care about the substance of that. The fact of the matter is that he exposed a rank prejudice, which indicates that he does not have a level of integrity to sit on the highest court. Justice John Paul Stevens, a Republican, 95 years old, but still very lucid, came out and said it straight out. When a person does that, they do not have the integrity to sit on the court. What is Justice Kavanaugh going to do when he is forced to decide on legislation that was passed by a Republican legislature? You know immediately that the guy hates it. Is he going to recuse himself? Chances are he's not. That's indicative that he does not have the integrity to sit on the court.
But Richard, don't you think the lashing out was a response to weeks of them vilifying him and vilifying him? And I would agree, he at that moment lacked what we'd call judicial discretion and temperament. His temperament was, I've been offended, my family's been offended, now I'm, and he was angry.
BS.
But
I respond to that with two letters.
He sat on
BS. Because.
But he sat on the D.C. Court of Appeals for a long time and had none of these problems. They weren't picking on him then.
Look, here's a very interesting thing.
Do judges have to endure media criminalizing you and beating you up day after day with lies? I mean, when it came down, it turned out that Christine Ford had not one corroborating witness. It was all a repressed memory that only she remembered.
That's untrue, and I'll tell you why.
Why?
Because the people said, I don't recall. And I don't recall is different from saying it didn't happen. Anyone that coaches a witness and says the following thing, if you have a memory, you're going to have 3 to 5 factors that are going to show that that memory exists. A memory is going to consist of certain things. It's going to consist of what you see, what you heard, what you smell, what you touch. If you have 3 of those 5 things that you can answer yes to, you're going to have a memory. If you can't come up with 3 out of those 5 things, you do not necessarily have a memory. So the easiest thing that a person says is they'll say, I don't recall. That does not mean that it didn't happen. It just means that this person does not have a recollection of what occurred. So when the Republicans come in and say, oh, there's no corroboration, That isn't true. It only means that the person that they talk to doesn't have a recollection. If you want to go down this rabbit hole, I'll go down it with you, because the next thing that you have is the FBI.
Well,
Why didn't the FBI go out and talk to all the people?
well, that's a good question.
And
Why did Dianne Feinstein, the senator from California, hang on to the letter until the FBI had concluded their investigation?
Because the FBI never even went there. Let me tell you about FBI investigations. When I joined the Justice Department, and I came in at the lowest level, level 0, but I was in the Foreign Commerce section, so I needed a secret clearance. It took the FBI a year to do my security clearance. And the reason was because from the period of time of 1964 to 1967, I was in every country in Europe with the exception of Romania, Bulgaria, and Yugoslavia. I was in Poland, I was in Czechoslovakia, I was in Hungary. I went through East Berlin on the train, and these were all behind the Iron Curtain. At the point, sometime before the year was over, the CIA did it overseas, the FBI did it in the US. I called the embassy and I asked for the CIA. I said, hello, CIA. The guy said, CIA. I said, look, what's happening with my investigation? He said, hey, we're finished. So it's the FBI that's taking the time. So for the lowest possible person, it took them a year. So how come with Brett Kavanaugh, who is going on to the highest court in the United States, and with 6 investigations, they never got around to doing what's happened in his high school? Now, they say they don't go beyond 10 years.
Well, it didn't happen in the high school. It happened at undisclosed house.
Come on, get serious.
I am serious. Richard, listen, let me say something. Let me give you my personal happening. At one time, when I was a young guy and looked much younger than I do now, I was groped by a girl at a bar in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I was just going in and she was going out and she groped me. And I remember specifically the place. I remember her face to this day. And I remember her boyfriend coming out and looking at me like, put him up. I just got groped. I didn't do a thing here. I just walking in. I just paid my money and showed my ID and I'm coming in and I got groped. I remember exactly where it happened. I remember who did it. I remember how I got there and I remember how I got home. The second time I was groped was in 1980 on Hollywood Boulevard in the middle of the gay, lesbian, whatever parade, And I'm
You're a cute guy.
Well, I was in 1980. Anyway, I'm walking down the middle of the boulevard. It's people lined up on both sides. Some gay guy crosses from the right side to the left side. I see him start to come out, but then he runs up and gropes me right in the public in a very private place. And I'm just there as a libertarian candidate, representing a district there. And I'm groped, and I remembered very specifically how I got there, how I was groped. And there were hundreds of witnesses, and I decided then I will never appear in a gay parade again, whether I'm a candidate or not, for any reason. I don't want to be around those people. They have no discretion, no sense of propriety. At least that man didn't. And I had a baby son at home, and here I'm groped. So this girl doesn't, and I remember this all these years. All these years I remembered this. In fact, I was offended with what a Catholic nun did when I was going to Saturday catechism in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. And I never spoke about it, never even thought about it until all this came up because my mother washed my mouth with lye soap. The old-fashioned lye soap? Not this nice, pretty, smelly soap, but the old-fashioned lye soap they had back in the 50s. And she told me, don't you ever repeat that. You will never say anything against the Catholic Church again. And I didn't. And I erased that memory until all this came up. And I remember exactly where that happened in the boys' lavatory on the 2nd floor at the St. Joseph's private school in Sturgeon Bay. I remember exactly where it happened. And this girl wants me to believe that she can't remember how she got there. Well, she's not a girl. She's a professor, if you can believe that. I look at this and I say, in a court, in the Bible, it says you must have 2 witnesses. If you come and accuse somebody, have 2 witnesses that back you up. She has no witnesses that appeared. Now, the Swetnick said she also had an experience, but when she was asked to come and put it under oath, she backed away. And so did the other one. What was her name? Remeriz. She backed away. When they were asked to go under oath. Now, Brett Kavanaugh, I'm not saying he's a perfect human being, but he's got 2 little girls. He coaches their sports team. His wife was sitting there right next to him. And he had 160 letters from female law clerks that all backed him up, saying he was a perfect gentleman. 160 letters. I couldn't get 20 letters from women saying, I'm a perfect gentleman.
Yeah, that's wonderful. But the bottom line of it is she took a lie test, a lie detector test.
But they never told us the exact results of the test. They said she took the test.
No, they said she passed.
Well,
the guy, I saw the guy on CNN. I heard him interviewed, and he's passed it.
I took a lie detector test too, and I found out later. They said, well, it's inconclusive.
Well, yours may have been inconclusive, but hers, she passed.
But I found out mine
you can play
wasn't.
the CNN tape.
Mine wasn't inconclusive. It's just that they didn't want to find that I was telling the truth. What I should have done in my case, it was out in the state of Utah, is I should have said, excuse me, but I want to have someone else review the results. Because I paid for the test. But people lie, and this was so
Are you
politically
saying
motivated.
that the professor lied?
Absolutely, no question on my mind.
Professor? Okay. Well, I think
No
we have
question on my mind.
I think we have a difference of opinion.
We do,
I think.
but we're
Yeah.
way off this subject
So-
of here.
But the bottom line with Brett Kavanaugh is that I disagree with you on the fact that he went through all the pressure and everything else. To go through that amount of pressure and everything, look, that happens. There's case law that says that judges, expect to have these things happen.
But this was severe.
So
and
what?
It went on for weeks.
So what?
I can't recall another justice, except maybe Bork, who went through this severe
Look,
criticism with no corroboration under oath. And that's what gets me, not under oath. You couldn't have convicted Brett of anything if this was a court of law. It would have been thrown out of case.
let me tell you, my personal feeling is if you put this into a court of law and you ran it through the exact ways of evidence and everything else, and you brought in all the witnesses, he'd be in jail. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, well, we can agree to disagree, Richard.
We can disagree on that. We have no problem disagreeing.
We're going to disagree on that one.
But the point that I am making is that you're dealing with integrity. And integrity is the only thing that a court has. Now,
Well, they also have power.
well, actually, they have power because of the belief in integrity. They have power within their sphere, and that's coming back to me. They have power to deny within their sphere, but the other interesting thing here is that they really didn't have jurisdiction because of the fact that the entire disbarment was based upon a fraud upon the court. And
Is there any statute of limitations on fraud on the court?
No.
Thank you.
So essentially, what takes place is that we had a fraud upon the court. There's no jurisdiction in the court, but the problem that exists that they function within their power, which unfortunately happens to cause a massive problem in my life.
Yeah,
cut
off your income.
Cut off my income, millions of dollars lost.
Well, they did the same thing to Randy Quaid.
Well, we're not dealing with Randy Quaid here.
We will tonight. Stick low. We got some info on Randy Quaid. So
but basically, but we're coming now to how do we solve this? Because
I think we should impeach all of them: Cantil, Chin, Corrigan, Liu.
You aren't going to get
Kruger. All of these impeach and remove all of the Supreme Court.
I don't know if you're going to get an impeachment. Impeachments are hard to do, but what you can do is you can get a situation where you can vote them out because we have direct control.
At least Corrigan and Kruger.
That's this year.
This year. This coming November 6th.
That's right.
Next month.
And the other
Just
thing,
vote no to retain them, and you might get rid of 2 of them.
That's right. But you also have power on the people in the legislature, because let's go in there and deal with what's happened in the legislature. SBX 211 was put in by Darrell Steinberg. Steinberg's gone.
And I asked Darrell Steinberg a question. When I questioned Senator Steinberg and he ran into the State House in Sacramento to get away from me. He didn't like my question. I said, wait, if you can do this and this and give them retroactive, why can't you let Richard Fine out of jail? Well, throw that in your bill. And he like, who are you? Where are you from? You know, you're not supposed to ask us these questions.
Exactly.
And he ran into the Sacramento courthouse. Not courthouse, the state capitol.
Let's deal on that side. Steinberg is gone. The next guy that came in as the president pro tem is De Leon, and he did nothing to cure SBX 211.
True.
So now we have Toni Atkins. She's now the president pro tem of the Senate. Now, I put in, during the time of Steinberg and De Leon, I put in bills to cure SBX 211. Nothing happened.
It won't.
Well, there's a new bill. I put in a bill.
How did you put in a new bill? Through what assemblyman?
What? I've got it in front of Hannah Beth Jackson. I have it in front of Toni Atkins. It's with their people right now. I have it with the head of the Joint Budget Committee of the
At least one of those is a hardened criminal and been in office way too long. So I have no confidence that's going anywhere.
Well,
but go ahead.
Well, anyway, this bill, this is a different type of bill. What I'm doing now is I'm saying what we're going to do is we're going to raise the state compensation of all the judges to the level of the LA judges, because there's this major disparity. LA gets this amount of money, other judges get nothing. So I'm going to raise that everybody to the same level, and I'm going to remove all the county payments, all the court payments. So we now have all the judges sitting at the same level. Then we have the judiciary sitting at the same level. We get rid of all these other payments.
But wasn't that law passed back in the 90s or 80s to give them all equal pay, a state paycheck? That was the intent.
Yeah, but what SBX 211 did is SBX 211 allowed the county payments to go to the judges who were getting it, who were in office in 2008.
So the crime can continue.
So then Sturgeon 2
with immunity.
Sturgeon 2 then came in and said that could be extended beyond just those judges. And then Sturgeon 3 came in and said that even new judges could get that extra money. So now you have a situation in California that judges who were getting things back in 2008, in those counties, the judges can get those payments all the way. Even new judges coming in today can get those payments. But judges who did not get anything cannot get any new payments. So you have judges in certain counties who got nothing. I'll give you an example. Santa Barbara, Marin, these are counties where basically the judges get nothing. They
get a pretty good nothing, though. I mean,
no, they get their state salary.
I would be happy with that state salary.
Okay, but and
I would show up for work at least once a week for that state salary.
And in San Francisco, where they're getting a certain amount but much lower, these are also high-priced counties. The initial idea was that one of the things was that the counties cost so much money to live in the county, they needed the extra money also.
Right.
Well, that failed because people are happy in Santa Barbara and everything. They're happy in Marin. So what is taking place is that I'm equalizing all that out. I'm cutting out all these things.
And give them all one flat salary.
They're all getting one flat salary, nothing different.
Did your suggestion get anywhere?
Well, I just put it in. That's one of the...
just last month?
Just now.
Oh, just this month?
I put it in August.
Oh,
Started out in August. And then the other thing that I did to get around the Supreme Court is I put in draft legislation to take care of my problem with the bar. Very simply saying, okay, we're going to get around the Supreme Court because just like...
You're going to try to legislate it.
Legislate it in. And in
very creative, Richard.
In addition to that, to be very honest, I'm also legislating in a certain amount of money.
To compensate you for all the years they robbed you.
All the years that, what they did with the families
Sounds
and
fair to
everything else.
me.
So these are ways. So what I'm getting to is that when people are looking at the state assembly, the entire state assembly is up for re-election right now. So
It is every 2 years.
every 2 years, but this time, in this 2 years, you have all these people running around saying, hey, re-elect me, unless they're termed out.
I wouldn't re-elect one of them.
But if anyone that wants to
Now,
be re-elected,
any incumbent, I would say, you're out of here. You know why? You know why?
What?
It's a real simple reason why. This legislature here has allowed a lot of innocent dads, non-custodial dads, to go to jail. And there was no SB X 211 retroactively letting them out of jail for failure to pay child support after the DA had thrown them in jail for 4 or 5 days because they were half a payment behind, or the payment wasn't transferred like you were talking about. They were holding money back in LA County and not dispensing it where it was supposed to go. And a whole bunch of guys who had paid the money end up going to jail. In fact, Richard drove over Suicide Bridge coming up here today. He didn't know it. It's on Highway 154 between Santa Barbara and you reconnect near Los Olivos. Suicide Bridge is where non-custodial dads in Santa Barbara jump off this 500-foot bridge head first because they don't want to go back into family court one more time and get thrown into jail, lose the new job they just got. And that's what these female, Joyce Dudley and her predecessor, the Wicked Witch Christine Stanley, who covered up for the crimes and did not in any way want to indict Tom Sneddon for his crimes of falsifying evidence in the Michael Jackson trial. And in fact, he was illegally testifying in the Jackson trial, and you wouldn't know this, you weren't there, but I was. Thomas Mesro, the defense attorney, said, "Objection, Your Honor. The district attorney is testifying from the floor. Let's put him on the witness stand and swear him in." And the judge said, "We're going to take a break now." And then after the judge said, "All right, come over here, you guys." And he had to talk. And of course, Tom Sneddon didn't get put on the witness stand, sworn in. But all these dads and a few moms thrown into jail for simply getting behind on payments. They still got to pay their own rent, they got to pay their own utilities and all this, and they get a month or two behind, or this county holds the money back intentionally to throw them in jail. And this is something, an issue you've never run into, but I've talked to thousands of dads and moms. And what routinely happens is one ex who's got the custody kids will move out of state. So then the money is paid to the state, and the state's supposed to transfer it to the other state. The state will hang on to it and say to the feds, "Hey, we got this money, we want double through federal funding." And so they get double that money from federal funding. Meanwhile, they're holding it on, it doesn't get to the other state. The visiting non-custodial parent goes to the other state, say, "Hi kids, I'm here." They slam the handcuffs. "We didn't get your child support, you're going to jail." So they lock him up, even though he's paid the money to his home state, and that state didn't transfer the money. This happens all the time. That's why every assemblyman should be thrown out of office. Vote no on all of them, because we're filling up jails with parents who are trying to be good parents. And if they had an SB X 11 to let all these criminals, the same criminals that wanted Richard Fine in jail for simply not wanting to pay their lobbyist costs to Mongolian or whoever it was, wasn't that Mongolian, that the judges hired and they wanted you to pay the bill to get SPX 211. I'll let you answer that. I'll let you. I know you want to clarify that, but for God's sake, when it comes to the point where you can't be a good dad or a good mom because they're putting you in jail, you lose your job, then you're even farther behind on your child support. Then they let you out for a month or two, you get another job, and they call you into court and say, "Hey, you're this much behind. If you don't get caught up, hey, you're going back in the news." That's why a half a dozen or more, I'm told as much as a dozen and a half, have jumped to their suicide, all dads as far as I know, on that 500-foot bridge, otherwise known as Coldwater Canyon Bridge. I call it Suicide Bridge. And that's why they put those arch fences up 8 feet high to make it difficult for them to commit suicide off that bridge, because the people that drive down below don't like seeing these splattered bodies and the blood in the morning when they're going to work. We need to throw out the entire state assembly, number one. Number two In my opinion, the Founding Fathers said if you ever get to more than 30,000 people, including babies and children, to one representative, you will have absolute tyranny. Well, in this state, with what, 40 million people and an assembly of only 80, that means every assemblyman represents 500,000 people. If 40,000 is tyranny, according to the Founding Fathers, what do we have? We have super on steroids and drugs and cocaine, absolute super tyranny, with only 80 people representing 40 million residents. That's why I say every assemblyman, whether you like them or not, vote them out, because they didn't do anything to change this wicked law. They just let it stay.
Okay, let me tell you.
So now clarify what I misstated.
Okay, here's the thing. That's all very nice, but unless
No, it's not nice, Richard. It's not nice.
But unless you have the other person promising and a way to enforce that promise to do what you want them to do, to throw out one without having the commitment from the other, you're not going anywhere.
Well, I have a solution. The solution is called 50-50. You don't get along anymore, you split. She gets the kids 6 months of the year, he gets the kids 6 months.
Yeah.
And you don't get to move 20 states away.
You're missing the point. The point,
I am?
Yeah. The point is this: when you're dealing with the political process, just throwing a person out without requiring the person that you're going to vote for to commit to the solution you want is not going to give you an answer.
That's
And
why I
that-
said my second point is we need probably at least 1,000 assemblymen in this. That would bring the ratio down
That's
to close to normal tyranny.
okay, but that's not going to
'Cause
solve.
we- yeah, but
it's not
can
going to
you-
solve the problem in the next 28 days.
Not in the next 28
Okay,
days. You're
so-
right about that.
So I'm looking at practical solutions.
There are none. There are
Yes,
no
there are.
practical
There
solutions.
are practical solutions consist of the following.
You know, the people in France had a practical solution for what's
Yeah.
his name? Remember?
Yeah,
Chop.
but
And
that's not
that
going to work
solved it.
here
It's his
either.
head rolled in the basket. And,
Yes.
and what did Jefferson say? Every generation you're going to need a revolution. You're going to need some blood of patriots and blood of the tyrants.
Yeah, that's also not going to work in today's world.
You don't think so?
No. Basically, we've got 20 some odd days before an election. You have people that want to be in office. Okay, what do? You don't let the people that want to be in office dictate to you what they want to say. You go to those people and you say, this is what we want and this is what we want you to commit to. That's the way that you get things changed. It's just like, and I'll give you an example. If you go in and you try and reach your assembly person or your state senator and you hit the contact button, and you look at the contact button and then it says issues, and they give you a list of issues that they want you to comment on. And then there's possibly an other. But you are really limited in talking to them on what you want to talk about. They only want you to talk about what they want to talk about. Well, those days are over. What we have to do is that in this election, we say to them, look, we want you to commit to do this. Otherwise, we don't vote for you.
But you can't even get to talk to them. That's
Yes, you
my
do.
point. The ratio is not 30,000 to 1
Yes, you do,
anymore.
because they go out to meetings, they go out to other places. We take your show, this show right here, and we make it go viral. That's how you talk to them, because what takes place in today's
Well, you're
world,
right partially. This show has caused a few ripples in the
exactly,
political.
and we can make it cause more. And what I'm saying is that the two pieces of legislation, we make this go viral, and you start getting things. I can tell you that in the 2014 election, in a 2-week period of time, using absolutely no money and only social media, I rose the no vote on the California Supreme Court justices from 20 point, I think it was 20% to 31.1%, using absolutely no money and using only social media. So with that 10-point rise, and in some places, I got the no vote over 50%.
But it would take $1 million campaigning
No,
statewide to get rid of
it's
Kruger and
No, it's going to take social media. It's taking this program and making it go viral, because once this program starts going viral and once it starts getting picked up by other groups and goes out to other places and so forth, things can actually get done. And that's today's world.
Well, I understand
So
today's
I'm,
world.
I'm 78 and a half years old. I come back. The Xerox machine was invented the day that I started law school. If I can end up working in today's world.
Now you can pick the cell phone up and you can communicate. You don't even have to
That's
Xerox.
right. I mean, in my world
I get
today,
it.
I communicate with clients on FaceTime at the same time while working on the computers, drafting documents.
But
This
shouldn't-
is the world that we're in.
I understand, but how do you make Judge Yaffe, who's enjoying his retirement, pay for your
I could care-
18 months?
Judge Yaffe is yesterday's tennis shot. He's out of my world. I could care less about Judge Yaffe.
But shouldn't you be compensated for what they did?
Yes,
to you?
I should. But I could. Here's the deal with Judge Yaffe, and it goes back to your earlier question. I moved to have Judge Yaffe disqualified from the case. Judge Yaffe did not respond within the 10-day period of time.
Yeah, he said,
Under
so
the-
what?
That's right. So under the law, under CCP section 170.4C, he was gone. He was officially out of the case.
So he had no jurisdiction?
He had no jurisdiction. And what happened is that
But the bailiff didn't know that when he
No,
took
but-
you off to the
well,
jail.
what happened is that he stayed on the case illegally. The presiding judge of the LA Superior Court did not do his job of transferring the case somewhere else.
Bingo.
And that was it. And that's how all these things took place. Judge Yaffe had absolutely no jurisdiction to do what he had to do.
I
He
agree.
He ended up doing it, and that's what causes all the problems. And
So
that's what's happening with this court
Our
right
courts have no credibility now. Forget
Exactly.
about Brett Kavanaugh, the Supreme Court. Right here in California, our courts have no,
That's exactly the point that I'm making.
there's no integrity there. They
That-
don't even have good judicial.
Bingo! You caught it.
But I only know of one or two cases I followed Kruger on that really she did the wrong thing. And it should have been obvious to, I mean, I went to law school, but I'm not a lawyer. I never took the bar. But she really blew it and did it intentionally wrong. And I can only assume somebody slipped her some money. Can't prove it. But the other one, I don't really know anything about Carol Corrigan.
Corrigan? Well, Corrigan started out as a municipal judge in Alameda County. She then became, when they merged the courts, she became a Superior Court judge in Alameda County. And then from there, she went on to the Court of Appeal, and then she went on to the California Supreme Court.
But
So she's now probably,
that's
I
not
think,
a crime in itself. What
No.
did she do wrong that we should vote no on her, other than what she did to you?
That's enough. That's enough. I mean,
That's enough.
That's enough. I mean, you're basically looking at it
Do you
six
think
times.
she has a pattern and practice of doing this, not to you, but to other people too, that you just
Well,
haven't
let's look-
found out about?
Let's look at it this way. If she did it to me 6 times,
There's a high probability she did
that's
it
right.
to other people, including somebody named Daniel Dizek, who's got a complaint against Tanny Cantil that is still pending on this date of 12 October 2018. And she did some things that even Chin, Corrigan, Liu, and Kruger didn't like.
yeah. Okay.
So we're going to see, but you don't get to vote no on Tanny Cantil. I think she should be impeached, put in jail.
Yeah.
Chin, I have some experience with Chin. I think Ming Chin should be in jail. Kruger should be in prison.
Well,
But I don't know much about Corrigan.
Before you jump into all these other things, once again, I'm a very practical person,
I know you are.
and I'm dealing with what can be done
Yeah,
now.
so
and-
all we can do is vote no
well,
this November 6th.
well, there's that, and see, you have to look, where do we have power? And our only power is in the vote. So,
Assuming the votes are honestly counted, and we know for sure
All right.
they're not.
well,
You know, they just had a convention in Las Vegas where the hackers were able to get in to the machines that we use in California and flip the vote within 2 minutes. They were able to
that's
do
good.
it.
But right now, I'm only looking at one thing.
I know.
I'm looking
But if
at,
it doesn't count and you vote and your vote gets flipped,
yeah, you know, there's a very famous saying, you know, it's the guy who always prays to God, and he sits there and says, God, I wish I'd win the lottery. God, I wish I'd win the lottery. God, I wish I'd win the lottery. And finally God responded. What do you think God said? Buy a ticket. So by the time you're worrying about what's happening, about whether they're going to fix the machine and all these other things, before we even get to that point, you got to get in there and vote. You have to exercise your vote. I mean, I have the Campaign for Judicial Integrity. If you go to that website,
say it again.
the campaignforjudicialintegrity.org.
.org. Okay,
.org.
thank you.
You go to that website, that explains everything that's wrong with our present California judicial system. But the bottom line of it is you got to get out there and vote.
And you got this letter you just sent off.
That was the letter that caused the court to go in on their own motion.
Case S168418, Richard Isaac Fine, petitioner versus the State Bar of California, which to me is just a criminal mafia.
But what happened is that it's very interesting because this letter, this was a request for them to do their own motion to cure the disbarment.
Right.
This was no longer my motion because my motions ran out. So they had to go in and do their own motion. So they had to make a motion,
Right.
and then they had to deny a motion.
Got it.
So they had to jump through all these hoops. So somebody had to argue that the motion should be made, and then somebody had to argue that the motion should be denied. Because the order that came down, which you saw, was the motion, wasn't the request was denied. The order that came down was the motion was denied.
Right.
So basically, you had a very interesting thing that happened here. If it really happened this way, that there had to have been a vote to make the motion. Well, that vote would have had to have passed with 3 out of the 5 people.
And it didn't happen.
Well, no, 3 out of the 5 people would have had to have moved to make the motion, and then at least 3 out of the 5 people would have had to have voted to deny the motion that they just made. So what we're looking at is an absurdity.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I mean,
the system is broke, Richard.
No.
It is broke. You're
I'll
trying
tell
to
you
fix it where we have
I'm telling you,
power.
I happen to believe in the judicial system that was set up.
Which one? The common law one that
No,
the
not the common
Constitution
law.
set up?
No, the Constitution set up a system. I believe in the system that the Constitution set up.
Article 7 of the amendments refers to common law over and over and over. Begins with common law, ends with common law. No one shall be caused to lose or stand trial, blah, blah, under common law. And law at that time only was common law. There was no statutory law.
The system that was set up by the Constitution. Constitution set up, you have 2 constitutions that are running here. In California, you have the state constitution. Overall, you have the United States Constitution. The California judicial system was set up by the California Constitution. The federal judicial system was set up by the federal Constitution. There are certain problems, and I'll take you into another thing. The Brennan Institute just came out with a plan where they believe that they want to change certain things. They want to go into more of an appointive type of system. This is a little bit off the subject. My personal feeling is that I'm not in favor of allowing politicians to appoint anyone. My feeling is that we should have an elective system for judiciary with the elections 100% supported by public money, which means that you can elect your judges, but there's no private money that's going to get into that.
But how do you qualify those that, for example, here's what just happened in California. You know this is true. The Libertarian Party was gaining ground in California, getting 2, 3, in some elections, 5% of the vote. So was the Green Party, actually elected somebody up near the Bay Area. And then the powers that be came and said, no, we're going to change the law so that the people in the November vote will be those that get the highest vote, regardless of party. And that way they eviscerated, there's no Libertarian candidate to vote. So those hundreds of thousands of people that wanted to support a Libertarian can't do it anymore. Same for the Green Party, can't do it anymore. So if you just say they're going to have state-supported elections, well then the powers that be will say, but only the top 2 voters in the primary for judges are going to be in the November write-off. And I agree, judges should be nonpartisan. It should be based on how well they apply the common law. I agree, but how can you stop that corruption? It's built into the system.
Well, actually, what happens is that you can go in, if you have totally state-supported elections, you're now looking at a law that is going to say that in a state-supported election, you're going to have a primary, and then you're going to have a top 2 runner. Out of all the people that are in there, the top 2 people will have the runoff. So what you want to say is you want to say that forget about the top 2 people. It's going to be the person that wins irrespective of the amount of votes that he or she gets. That's your
Okay,
answer.
run that.
Okay.
I think Richard's never seen this.
Before you run it, so your alternative is to allow a minority person to win the, when I say minority, a person who wins the minority number of votes to win the election. And that's going to put you, and I'm going to give you two
I have
two
never
realists.
thought about this issue that you raise here.
Well, it's happened.
I have to think about this.
Well, think about it in the following terms. Bush versus Gore. In other words,
no, that's it. But when you apply it to judges and Supreme Courts, that's different because they shouldn't be Democrat or Republican. I know they are. I know they all have their Democrat or Republican bias, but when you walk into a court, the judge shouldn't look at you and say, there's Richard Fine. He's a heavy Republican donor. Let's make sure he loses this case. You know, I don't care what his facts are. Make sure he loses. Well, fine. They shouldn't look at you that way. I think judges should be a non-political office. Yeah. But I just feel they've been in there too long, and we need common law judges. We need people that understand the common law and uphold it. But more than that, we need the people to understand the common law, and they don't. They don't know the difference between statutory law and common law, equity law, they have no clue. The average person has absolutely no clue.
Nor do most lawyers. I mean,
I agree with you, Richard.
That's true. I mean, look, I consider myself a fairly sophisticated lawyer. I do not claim to be an expert in admiralty law. You know,
or family law.
I've learned a lot about family law, actually.
Let's go to that clip, and we'll come back with Richard. In this building is where the legislature retroactively made legal that which was illegal. The case was called the Sturgeon case. In the Sturgeon case, the plaintiff party proved that more than 400 Los Angeles County judges were taking open bribes from an entity known as the County of Los Angeles. By supplementing their state salary, they were in violation of penal code and tort law. And for nearly 2.5 years or more, not a single case was ruled by Los Angeles County judges against the County of Los Angeles. What happened then? In January and February of this year, 2009, a lobbyist named Mongolian came here to this building, the Capitol building here, where Fathers for Justice just met. And they asked the legislature to go back and retroactively make legal that which was illegal. And they did. And Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, there we go.
That
to overturn the Sturgeon decision?
that allowed them to keep the benefits that they already have.
And how did you vote on that?
I voted yes.
And why?
I'm sorry, you are from where? From where? I'm sorry, you are from where?
William Wagener for On Second Thought.
I'm sorry, you are from where?
William Wagener for On Second Thought.
From where?
California.
Okay.
I'm from California.
Well, good for you. Okay.
Right. Well,
Oh, yeah, it is good for me, but I'd
Isn't
like
that
to know why-
legalizing a criminal act, though, sir? Isn't that legalizing a criminal act?
I don't.
Didn't it violate the penal code?
No.
No.
The judges have benefits, and the bill allowed them
But they
to
get a
retain
state
the benefits
salary.
that
So
they
why
they
should
get
the
a
judges
state-
in LA County get more money?
Well, why not let Fine out? Pass a bill to let Richard Fine out of jail.
Well, you didn't like that. Wow. Well, I guess we didn't get our answer.
I didn't get the answer I was looking for there. That was supposedly one of our representatives. What was that name?
That's Daryl Steinberg. He is.
Well, Richard never saw that before. I don't remember.
I
That was
thank you for that.
that was 2009. You're sitting in jail. I'm thinking you can let all these criminals on the bench get bonuses, and this is not counting that other stuff where they were taking money from the children's fund and buying their mistresses diamond rings and cars and gifts and all that. Not that we're not talking about that. This was just a bill to let them retroactively get away with crime. The guys in the black robes sitting on the benches, but they couldn't put a rider in to let this guy out of jail. And Richard and I don't even agree, as you saw earlier, on everything. But the fundamental wrong to lock this man up for 18 months for exposing their crimes, I don't see that justice has ever come about. That was probably the only time Steinberg was actually confronted with anybody getting in his face and putting it to him. Because I'm sure everybody else is on their knees begging for favors, and here's $20,000 if you get my little rider in your bill. And I'd say I'm not lobbying. Okay,
Well,
we're down to 10 minutes.
The interesting thing, let me tell you what happened with the LA judges. In 2012, it came out that back in 2002, the LA judges admitted to the man who was the public information officer for the LA Superior Court that they had a visceral hatred towards me.
Yeah, it's in your documents
Yes,
right here.
They wanted revenge against me.
Wanted revenge against Fine?
They wanted to silence me, and they wanted to take me out of communication.
Yeah, it's right here
And
in your letter here.
the further part of his interview, he talked about the fact that whenever I came into the court, they had somebody following me.
They did
had-
the same thing with Dizak.
Yeah, so
And
they had,
others.
they had all these things going from literally from about 2000 onwards, from the time that I first exposed them,
Yep.
all the way through. And then another part of that interview showed that they were getting so embarrassed as to what was happening with me that they were trying to find a way to get Yaffe off the case and have somebody else come in and let me free. But then Yaffe screwed them over by doing it himself. But what happened with Yaffe is that Yaffe turned out in July of 2010, he admitted that way back in 2008, where he had made an order that I didn't have a right to criticize him or a right to challenge him. You know, it was in March 18, 2008, he made that order. But then in July 2010, he said, well, that was a wrong
this.
order. And he admitted that in
Right, where's
July
that?
2010. And that was his downfall. Because at that point in time, that meant that everything that happened, from that point onward, everything that he had done was wrong. In addition to my having knocked him off
I got that.
on March 20th.
But we don't have Yaffe in prison yet, and he should be in prison
Well,
for what he
you know,
did. He
Let me
committed
tell
a
you
crime.
something. Sure he did. But let me tell you something. You put any one of these judges in the solitary coercive confinement that I was in, you lock them up for 18 months and only let them out maybe 10 days into the fresh air in a cage, they would never be able to survive it. You know, they,
Well, that would be okay too.
you know, they would, no way that they would ever be able to survive it. But this thing is still going on right now. In fact, I'm going to extend it to you a little bit further. With respect to things that are happening right now, we have a judge whose name is Riff, R-I-F-F, and he got disqualified. He didn't respond within 10 days. We did the whole thing to go forward, or this particular client did the whole thing to go forward and knock him out. They didn't knock him out. And it went all the way up to the controller, to Yee, who's running for re-election. And this particular individual got a letter back from Yee's chief counsel saying that she doesn't enforce the rule, which is in Article 6, Section 19, that says that if a judge doesn't come out with an order within 90 days, they lose their pay. Controller of California is not enforcing that rule.
They're not enforcing it, obviously.
Yeah, so there's another person. Want to vote somebody out? Controller Yee, for not doing her job as the controller.
When November 6th comes, you can vote no on Corrigan, no on Kruger on the state Supreme Court. I don't know if it will do any good, but if I were, I'd vote every incumbent out.
Well,
That's me. That's just me, because
unless they're willing to pass,
well,
unless they commit to pass the legislation for the judges and the legislation for me. That's
With
they
that,
want to stay in office.
I'd like to.
Pass that.
We're going to be back with one last comment from Richard Fine. I want to bring up the Quaid thing. Randy Quaid was run out of Santa Barbara County on false accusations. I went to the Santa Barbara and asked the sheriffs to show me the evidence that there's a broken mirror that Randy Quaid, and that's why he got a warrant out for his arrest. Right? Show me the broken mirror. I went there just a couple days ago. I'm William Wagener for On Second Thought. We're at the Sheriff's Department. We've just asked, today's Thursday, we've asked for to see the evidence in the Randall Quaid case. Bill Brown isn't available, apparently not in today. Edward has been promoted to lieutenant and moved north in the county. And we can't find anybody who's going to be here or here tomorrow to simply show us a broken mirror or photograph of a broken mirror, which is the key evidence that keeps a warrant out for Randolph and Evie Quaid, who apparently are being kept out of the county by a bogus warrant, which Vermont tried to get, and they wouldn't show the evidence to Vermont. They wouldn't show it to authorities in Indiana, but they wanted the Quaids arrested without producing the evidence. Now we're here asking for it, and they can't show it to us. Maybe they'll call us next week. William Wagener at the Sheriff's Department, Santa Barbara. Thank you. Now I have the entire thing from the Indiana attorney. It's a firm of Eintertz and Eintertz. This went down in 2014, where Evie and Randy Quaid asked for them to show the evidence. The warrant from Santa Barbara saying, just put them in handcuffs and send them back to California. And the judge, both in Vermont and Canada and Indiana, said, show me the evidence. And they wouldn't. I went there and they wouldn't show me the evidence. I don't know where Lieutenant Edward is, but we're going to contact him, get him to say something. Show us the evidence. Here's the rub of this whole thing. What appears to me, having looked at this for several years, haven't talked about it. I hope to get more time on this today, but Richard had a lot to say today, and I think it was worth having said. I'm still going to give you the last minute, Richard, but I think this scam, selling their house without their permission, and we had Marie McDonald on YouTube already. You can look it up. We were going to run it for you tonight. She's saying there's fraud in these documents in Santa Barbara County on the Quaid house. And she's an expert in forensic document examination. So we're going to reach out to Lieutenant Edward and see what we can get. Do we have Marie McDonald there?
We will in a second.
This guy is Vic Alvarez. He's involved somehow with the Quaid thing and an attorney named Capitito, I think. And we're going to reach out to these people and see if they'll explain why the Quaids have to be kept out of California to avoid illegal, unlawful arrest with a bogus warrant with evidence they won't show us. They wouldn't show the court in Vermont. They wouldn't show the court in Indiana. So Canada wouldn't extradite them. Vermont wouldn't extradite them. Indiana wouldn't extradite them. But does Sheriff Bill Brown here? Come on, Bill. Show me the evidence. The Quaids broke anybody's mirror, and it was their house anyway, according to them. What is Bruce Berman, their business partner have to do? They deny they ever sold it to him. Here's Marie.
Yes.
So he's telling the truth when he
Evie as
said
well.
someone stole his home.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Wow.
And he's still hiding in Canada.
I wrote a letter in support of their petition to have their passports returned. I know they came into the States in Vermont, and I think they were successful in doing that, but I don't know where they are right now or what their circumstances are.
So they were telling the truth when they said they had been bamboozled out of their property and they hadn't done anything wrong.
Well, I can't go so far as to say that because there's a lot of missing information surrounding the real estate agency who actually sold that property to a family by the name of Berman, who I think Randy and Evie knew through their acting careers. I forget what his position was in the studio, but in any event, there really is.
2 minutes?
If I had been
Okay, come back to us and bring up
involved,
that Browns clip. You got 1 minute. 1 minute here.
Okay, I can do it.
Go ahead, Richard.
Well, I think in summary, what we've been able to show is that there is a lack of integrity in the court system. And the only way that we can deal with that lack of integrity is to exercise the one right that we have, and that is the right of the ballot box. That's our power. In my website, campaignforjudicialintegrity.org, I show the different ways that we can act, but tonight, here we have approximately 20-some odd days. This means, as far as candidates are concerned, on your two Supreme Court justices, Corrigan and Kruger, vote no.
Vote no.
On your controller, who is refusing to act and withhold the pay of judges that don't make decisions within 90 days, vote no.
There you have it.
With respect to everyone else who is not going to pass the two pieces of legislation that I recommend, tell them to do it or vote no.
Did you vote on that?
I voted yes.
And why?
I'm sorry, you are from where? From where? I'm sorry, you are from where?
William Wagener for On Second Thought.
I'm sorry, you are from where?
William Wagener for On Second Thought.
From where?
California.
Okay.
I'm from California.
Well, good for you. Okay.
Right. Well,
Oh, yeah, it is good for me, but
Isn't
I'd
that
like to know why.
legalizing a criminal act, though, sir? Isn't that legalizing
I
a
don't- I-
criminal
I-
act?
I don't.
It didn't violate the penal code?
No.
No.
The judges have benefits, and the bill allowed them
But they
to
get a
retain
state
the benefits
salary.
that
So
they
why
They
should
get a
judges
state-
in LA County get more money?
Well, why not let Fine out? Pass a bill to let Richard Fine out of jail.
Well, you didn't like that. Wow. Well, I guess we didn't get our answer.
I didn't get the answer I was looking for there. That was supposedly one of our representatives. What was that name?
Yeah, that's Daryl Steinberg. He is.
Well, Richard never saw that before. I don't remember.
I
That was
thank you for that.
that was 2009. You're sitting in jail. I'm thinking you can let all these criminals on the bench get bonuses